Alright, we are live, back at it after a 47-hour break or what have you for me. Some people had a nice day yesterday. Shout out to Jeffrey Forever from the Osmo.com Premium Slack, who had himself a good night last night. Hit me with a private message a little while ago saying, hey, thanks a lot for last night's content, which I assumed was one of several people taunting me as they are wont to do, and I do encourage because it's good times. But I didn't realize that he was one of the couple people I spoke to about yesterday's slate, where he had sent me a private message saying, hey, is it okay to fade hard? And I said, well, it's on the showdown slate, or the 2-game slate, or something like that, one or the other. Showdown slate it must have been, because it was a late slate and there were only 2 games last night. And I said, well, if you do, make sure you make Chris Paul your captain. And he did. And they got that. So shout out to him. And Chris Paul, I don't know if we'll get the Capella game. I said I expected one very good game out of Capella, one very good game out of Chris Paul this series. Did not get the Capella game yesterday, but certainly got that Chris Paul game. Unsurprising. We have had the Pacers and the Pistons go quietly into that good night, and could see quite a bit more of that tonight. 4 games this evening. One with the teams knotted at 2-2. The other 3 elimination contests, so a lot of drama in the association this evening. I shall attempt to acquire the tweet. Send out the tweet, and we will get on playing. Someone just said, is Torrey Craig a trap play tonight? Think Pop reacts to him or no? It doesn't matter if Pop reacts to him. You're playing Torrey Craig because he's too cheap and he should get a bucket of minutes. So, sure, we'll talk about that for a second. While we are waiting for people to file in, if you are watching the show and have a second, tweet the link at me so I can just retweet it or cut and paste it or whatever. Yeah, a lot of people, myself included, thought Malik Beasley might take Will Barton's starting spot because he's just been playing better. Barton has a hip injury and a core abdominal injury and just hasn't played well really the entire year, relative to last year where he was a real fantasy darling and had some monster games. The overall improvement of the offense around him, the bench guys in the form of Beasley and Morris especially taking a step forward this year. He sort of got sort of normalized out of extra usage, and you didn't really see those ceiling games. But additionally, he's a defensive liability. He's a really skinny guy, so he has trouble with either bigger wings or, in the case of DeMar DeRozan, taller wings. I think DeRozan runs about 6'7". And so that was a real issue. And so correctly, I think Mike Malone decided to put Torrey Craig into the starting lineup, and that obviously worked extremely well. He's an exceptional defender. It changes things up significantly for both teams. He is not a big usage guy. He played, 36 or 37 minutes in that game. And took 9 shots, I believe, made 7 of them, including shooting 5 of 7 from 3. He's not generally a big offensive threat. If you're going after him, it's because because you presume the minutes are reasonably secure. Assuming this game stays close, and this series has been close, even if every game hasn't been, you would expect him to get a similar minutes load to what he got last game, where Denver in San Antonio managed to pull that game out, get it up to 2-2. So I have him projected at 36 minutes and 28 fantasy points right now. But yeah, 9 shots. I would probably take the under on that total today. Shooting 70% from the field, I would definitely take the under on that. But you're just in there for the defensive stats. He's a pretty good steals guy, can catch a block once in a while. And just being on the court, and obviously can get hot shooting, could take 13 shots instead of 9. There's enough upside there. But that, combined with the fact that most of the value tonight is balls, I'm a pretty big Torrey Craig fan. I thought he would be 55% owned, as, to me, demonstrably the best value play on this slate. And the fact that we currently have it projected in the mid-30s, I would want to get on top of that. So to he who just asked, was Torrey Craig some manner of trap play? I don't think so. It's certainly not a must play. Him playing only 30 minutes and scoring only 16 fantasy points would not shock me whatsoever. So certainly reasonable to move away from such a thing. But no, I generally like him very much. I'm talking. I'm I'm talking. I got people in the premium Slack wondering where I am. I'm just going to sit here and be eye candy until someone locates the link. Maybe I'm hosting the hockey show again. That's happened a few times. Shout out to Josh Engelman, who sent me a message about 5 minutes ago, like, you're all set to go. And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to host the hockey show again. To which he lolled, but I am thinking there's non-zero chance. No, apparently it is in the basketball show. I'm sorry I ever doubted you, Josh. Look, it's my smiling face in my Cleveland Browns sweatshirt. Cleveland, this one's for you. Sorry, doing my best LeBron there. Well, there's probably flop and fall out of my chair from an invisible foul while I'm at it. Okay. Alright, so let's get into this one. Alright, so starting at the top, Orlando down 3-1. Going into Toronto, I picked the Raptors in 5. I was worried about that pick after Orlando stole the first game, but they've managed to rail off 3 straight. They are 11-point favorites tonight, so I might get that one right on the nose. This game is pretty much the ugliest game on the slate, and Orlando pretty much the ugliest team on the slate for these purposes. It's a 4-game slate, so we're still going to talk about them a little bit, but if you don't end up with a magical player on your roster this evening, I would not feel too badly about it myself. DJ Augustine, again, we sort of already got his miracle game for the series. He's actually a fine cash game play. There's really no reason to be too concerned with running him out at 5K in cash if he fits in there. I'm not targeting him. And there's a little value. I'd like a little more point per dollar, probably even in cash, but nothing wrong with it there. And not to be too obvious about it, but we saw him drop 40 at the beginning of the series. Do I think he's going to do it again? No, but the ownership has probably dropped to such a point where I don't consider it an incorrect play if you happen to run him out there in a tournament. Would probably be as some sort of a game stack. I would rather run Terrence Ross. I would rather run Evan Fournier. I think it's a little more likely those guys hit an upside, but I'm not a huge fan of any of these 3 players. John Isaac at $4,300 on DK deserves notice. I slightly prefer Joe Harris. Not words I thought I would say, and we'll get there when we talk about the Brooklyn-Philadelphia game, but that being obviously a much more healthy DFS environment, conducive to decent scores. Harris got up to 35 minutes last game. Now he's $800 more than Torrey Craig. I prefer Torrey Craig a good bit to Harris, and I have him projected reasonably close to each other. He's been bad. Shot, I think it was 3 of 4 from 3 in the first game of the series, and then proceeded to miss his 10 threes since then or something. Might be more. But he's like 0 of 3, 0 of 4, 0 of 6 the last 3 games from 3. He was either the best or second best 3-point shooter in the association this year. Won a 3-point contest you may have seen. So not surprised if a few of those drop in. And again, last game, crunch time, they gave him 35 minutes. He took 14 shots. He's a little more chalky than you would like him to be, certainly, and is far from a must-play. But given the value options on the slate, Joe Harris does make some sense. I would prefer him to, say, DeMar Carroll, where I think the minutes are a little more suspect. And again, there's been a couple comments from the coaches and even from Joe himself indicating that he should be trying to take a couple more shots. We saw some of that in the last game with him putting up 14 shots, which was the most in the series for him. So somehow in the middle of this Magic and Raptors game, we talked about Joe Harris for a minute. But no problem with Joe Harris. I would probably rather play Joe Harris from any sort of raw points consideration. The last game out of Jonathan Isaac was not good. That being said, we have also seen an excellent game out of him. His ownership has fallen pretty low. FanDuel, again, I think there's other places you would rather go, certainly for safety or cash or raw points, but in play there, because he's a guy who can get numerous steals and blocks, and small forward there is bad. So, raw points, I'll save $1,200 and play $4,300 Joe Harris there. But DK, that's a really interesting question there in tournaments. You'll get Isaac at lower owned. But obviously Harris is at least to some degree safer. Aaron Gordon has been the most consistent, pretty significantly player on the Magic this series. I do expect his minutes to continue to trend up, as one of our eagle-eyed players corrected me on the last show 2 days ago that I hosted. He even lost a few minutes in, not that last game, but the game previous due to some first quarter foul trouble, and in this last game that came true, and he did play 38 minutes. If there is some appeal to any number of the players on the Magic, it would be in the fact that this is an elimination game. If they don't win this game, everyone goes fishing for 4 months. For that reason, you can expect the minutes for their 6 guys who they give a shit about to be really towards the top. And that's the reason that while I still ranked Michael Carter-Williams and Kem Birch, I believe the 2 of them got nods of being double Ds in the rankings. I really don't want to play those guys. They might get a share or 2 in 150, but you're either needing massive blowout where they give up the ghost because they're down 30 with 8 minutes to go, or you get significant foul trouble on, say, DJ Augustine or Nikola Vucevic. Don't really want to West Wondu for the exact same reason. So Vooch has had 1 good game this series. The minutes are very encouraging. Outside of a blowout, he is going to play 40 minutes here, give or take a minute either side. 40 minutes of Vooch at $7,700 has a clear upside. Again, I was talking about Aaron Gordon. DK, I would prefer Vooch. FanDuel, I would prefer Aaron Gordon. It's the difference between an $1,100 differential in their salaries and $1,600, so that's about how I have them ranked for raw points. Gordon actually a little more essential there because they really need him out there playing defense, especially if Isaac's minutes are threatened in any way. They really want Aaron Gordon out there playing 40 minutes of defense on one of those 2 guys. So, but again, the team I'm least interested in targeting tonight probably these Orlando Magic. For the Raptors, again, I'm going to come in under on Kyle Lowry and suggest you do the same. I like Kyle Lowry just fine, but if I'm spending $7,000 on DK or $8,000 on FanDuel, I want guys who have a better chance at hitting an upside game than he does. I don't mind him in cash, really, on either site. Probably going to get you 30. I think I have him projected for 35. That's fine. Real chance he gets you 40, but, the odds of him getting to 50 or something with Siakam and Leonard out there, it's just really been fairly unlikely this year. So a little disinclined towards him in tournaments. I'd have some, but I'd be talking 8% or 10%, and I expect that to be under the field. Kawhi Leonard, I would prefer on DK to Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam coming off really his only bad game of the series. They are running him out there just infinite minutes. On DK, for the slightly higher upside, I will spend $800 extra and take Kawhi Leonard on FanDuel. Again, they're different positions, of course. There, I would slightly rather Pascal Siakam, taking $1,200 off the top there, and the ownership's going to be a little bit better. He's just been under-owned this series as opposed to where he should have been. Sort of like Eric Bledsoe. We were watching the game last night, and Bledsoe wasn't brilliant again, but he was the best play on that team this series, and he was like the 3rd or 4th highest owned Buck the entire series. Chris Middleton was more owned than him every single game. He outscored Bledsoe once by 2. In the other 3 games, Bledsoe outscored him twice significantly. And at the beginning of the series, I had Bledsoe for 5 additional points a game over Middleton. So I don't know how everyone else's projections were so different from mine, but especially the first 2 games, hopefully that made some people some money, because like $6,200 Bledsoe, that was just dumb. Talking about some of the value here, I would slightly prefer Norman Powell to Fred VanVleet because of the just how I expect the rotations to go in this particular instance. I think he would be the one to pick up a couple minutes before Fred does in this case. Not thrilled with either of them. Much bigger fan of both on FanDuel where they are droppable. Don't want to pay $5,000 for Serge Ibaka. You need something to go weird. I still kind of like Marc Gasol. $5,900 on FanDuel is not a big price. Last game, obviously completely absent offensively, took, I want to say, 3 shots and made 1 or something like that. Lost in time again. There's been blowout, lost time. There's been foul trouble, lost time. If this game stays close, Marc Gasol plays at least 30 minutes. Wouldn't shock me to see 34 or something. Does an excellent job against Vooch, who is the best offensive player on the other team. That's why they've run him out there a lot. The one big game that Vooch had came with Gasol in foul trouble. So, pretty big fan of Marc Gasol, especially on FanDuel, $5,900. Again, if we get news in time, again, Joel Embiid's injury status hangs over the entire slate. I expect him to play. He obviously was transcendent in that last game, as more than a couple of people reminded me. It is a brilliant matchup for him. I again think projecting him for 2 fantasy points a minute is not unreasonable in this case. I think that's about the right projection, which is about the highest I've ever projected a player for, but postseason, well-rested, Brooklyn, all those things. And we'll get to that game now. But Joel Embiid, presuming he plays and starts again, got 32 minutes in that last game. Some of the extra usage was Butler being ejected. That's worth a little bit. There's some other things going on there. But, assuming Joel Embiid gets in there. So we'll just pivot right to that game. The 76ers, also up 3-1, hosting the Brooklyn Nets. This the most fantasy-friendly game of the evening by a little bit over, again, Portland and OKC. The other 2 games are not so appealing, as has been the case. Again, we're talking game 5s thrown through here, so to a certain extent, you've heard a lot of what I have to say before. I can think of like 2 hot takes. I don't know about hot takes, but different takes that I've been talking about this whole series. But there is going to be a lot of the same here. Obviously, some changes with this Nets team. We got Jared Dudley moving to the starting lineup. We got Karis LeVert. I originally ranked Jared Dudley and then yanked him in the revision. There just isn't enough upside. He's 39 or 37 on FanDuel at his ship position, I guess. He's 33 on DK. I suppose he's a really limited fantasy player. In the last game, we saw like 20 fantasy points in 20 minutes. That's really good. That's about as good as you're going to get. Could the minutes come up? I guess. I don't think so much. This is a pretty deep team. They took Kurucs entirely out of the rotation last game, and Ed Davis wasn't there, and he played 20 minutes. So I don't know how much higher it's going to go, and he's not good. The game previous, he played, I think it was 16 minutes, and ended the game negative on FanDuel. He's just not running out there next to Karis LeVert and D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie and Jared Allen and Joe Harris. He's not going to do a lot to score fantasy points. So on FanDuel, really, really, really low on my list of guys I want to punt, and on DraftKings, it doesn't seem right to me. I would much rather, if you're in that $3,300 range, Nerlens Noel, Terrence Ferguson, there's just guys who I can envision having the ceiling game. And as much fun as I've enjoyed Jared Milk Dudley's moment to shine here and taunting far more talented players on the Philadelphia 76ers, I don't think that translates to fantasy success. D'Angelo Russell is obviously still in play. We have not gotten the monster game that is possible out of him in this series. Behind all the other narratives, his growth as a player this year, he is a guy who carries some swag with him. I don't terribly like him. I think LeVert's coming on is very relevant. Having Butler out there for a full game, not terribly good for LeVert, but points per dollar, I'm going to prefer saving $1,600 on FanDuel, I think it is, from 85 to 69, and $2,200 on DK from 81 to 59 to play Karis LeVert. I assume Karis LeVert is fairly chalky, but he should be. Yes, we have him as the 4th highest owned player on DK right now, and these top 4 players are all within 4%. We have pretty even ownership again. We have 7 players on the top of our DraftKings ownership board, all ranking from 30 to 36%. Let me refresh. Oh, updated 6 minutes ago. Hey, look, that's really funny. Did I say 54% on Torrey Craig? Is that the exact number I said? DK ownership, number 1, Torrey Craig, 54%. Okay, so that is about where that should be. I have no problem if you play 100% Torrey Craig. I have no problem if you play no Torrey Craig. He is demonstrably drink if you're doing the Fast 80 if you're watching the show game, drinking game, which demonstrably is one of the words that you drink on. So drink for that. But that's where he should be. He is significantly and quite obviously the best value play on the slate. We'll get back to that in a minute. But number 2 on that list now, Karis LeVert at $5,900. Yep, he's a really good spend up. I think I would have a little more than 42%. He contributes in enough ways. I think the time is real. I'm a fan of that. Number 3 right now, Lillard. Number 4 right now, Jokic. I'm presuming we are doing this with Embiid out. I don't see him. Alright, so right now we have Embiid listed at 11%. Let me make sure I'm not missing any pertinent news here. But I would be pretty surprised if Joel Embiid didn't play. There were no Joel a game time decision? Yep, that landed right on time. Okay, so that's sort of a fascinating situation. So, do I think the same thing about Craig on FanDuel at 4.6K? He's not as good on FanDuel at 4.6K. That's $1,100 over the floor as opposed to $400 over the floor. There is obviously some number of other options on FanDuel making it slightly more tolerable. But just a moment, everyone. I'm looking for something for the misses here. There's scintillating television here.
Isn't that green thing?
Nope. Okay, come on.
Never mind.
Sorry, everybody. My wife's looking for something on her way out of the house, and we've
Misplaced it.
This is functionally the same thing. Knock yourself out. Okay, so obviously there's some other options when you're looking at say $4,600 on FanDuel as opposed to $3,400 on DK. So I still like Torrey Craig. He's certainly the safest of the plays in that price range on FanDuel, but and you can even add that the upside is a little bit higher. Although it doesn't look like that after the last game where he saw 5 3-pointers. That's not frequently something you're going to see out of TG. Gary Harris' shot total drop last game. Was that because of Craig? No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, Torrey Craig took 9 shots in 37 minutes. That's not demonstrably less than we're going to be taken by Barton or Beasley. Honestly, that's probably, or that is less generally than those two players would have taken. So, no, the real way Torrey Craig tilts that game is that it actually is enough for me to favor LaMarcus Aldridge as opposed to DeMar DeRozan because of the level of defensive consistency now at the wings. Gary Harris is a well above average defender, and Torrey Craig is extremely good. The reason he hasn't gotten more time is he's defensively kind of anemic. But this may have been a better team the entire season if they ran Torrey Craig out there because they have enough competent offensive options, at least when Paul Millsap is playing at a reasonable level. But no, Gary Harris's adjustment was not related to that. He's fine. He's not really super tournament upside guy. Probably rather do that on FanDuel because he's a fairly competent steals player, and I could see Gary Harris getting to a ceiling that way. He's been consistent, so the risk feels a little more manageable. And again, the price we'll look at the end of the show. We'll take a look at some of the guys versus other guys in their price range. But so anyhow, getting back to this second game, which is the nicest game. I like Joe Harris. Again, 35 minutes in that last game is telling for me. 14 shots in that game is telling for me, especially FanDuel, where small forward, which is balls, different position from Torrey Craig, by the way, so you can run them both as your shooting guard, small forward, punt, 4,300. 4,300 on FanDuel is much nicer than 4,200 on DK for a couple of reasons. So especially on FanDuel, yeah, I like Joe Harris quite a bit. Don't want to play Dudley. I'm presuming, and I will get back to talking about Embiid, who is now a game-time decision. I assumed we'd get there, but we'll talk about the Nets for a minute more. I still assume Embiid is going to play. Again, last game he was doubtful, and then game-time decision and played. He then got 3 days off. I assume that means he will warm up again, and if he feels good, play again. That is my interpretation of he is a game-time decision. It was a game-time decision last time. He went out, warmed up, no brace, felt great, played. I presume today they said, so how are you feeling? You went pretty good, but I'm going to go out and warm up and see how it feels again. They went, okay, let's call him a game time decision again. So I don't look at it as it's a downgrade, obviously, versus when it said probable. I assumed he would just suit up and play without further consternation. But I still think I would probably give someone 4-1 odds he plays. So getting back to this team, if he plays, I'm going to have a lot less interest in Jared Allen, but not zero. Jared Allen's fortunes are more directly tied to Ed Davis, who we're also waiting for news on, who is questionable. Jared Allen is playable in a tournament right now, but you want Ed Davis to be out or limited, which, again, he's been dealing with that ankle issue on and off for a while. In game 2 or 3, played like 9 minutes and then had to leave because the ankle went again. So there's a real chance, even if they go, he's available, his minutes are limited, or He's not fully effective, and they showed in the last game, rather than what many of us thought would happen, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson did not get any significant amount of time there. They went back to Jared Allen, and he played really well, even in some time on the court against Embiid. So I'm fine running Jared Allen out in a tournament right now. FanDuel slightly prefer paying only $400 for Marc Gasol. That feels a little bit better for me. A little less likely Marc Gasol will fail, and I do think there is a real upside there. Getting 45 out of Marc Gasol would not shock me on FanDuel just because steals, blocks, the time being pushed up a little bit in an important game. Last player on this team I want to talk about is Spencer Dinwiddie. Has not been great, has like 20, 23, 24, and 25, I think, in 4 games this series. I think those are all average to slightly below average games from him. Not shocked to see 35 out of him. On DK, not a big fan. In play, if I was playing 150 lineups, I'd have 8 to 10%, I think, something like that. But FanDuel at $5,000, kind of safe, and there is a ceiling there. Seeing 40 fantasy points out of Spencer Dinwiddie tonight wouldn't shock me. And $5,000 on FanDuel is a pretty attractive price. Not that different from the Darren Collison play that we saw. The minutes, not quite as sexy as that is, but can get there in a similar way, even after a string of unexciting games. So, the 76ers. Again, I presume Joel Embiid plays. I think I've already presented all information I really have on this topic. Played the last game, played 32 minutes after missing the game before, playing 24 minutes and 21 minutes in the first 2 games of the series. And again, that game had only 1 day off. This game has had 2 days off after the game. Although I suppose that game he didn't have 1 day off because he'd sat the last game, so he'd had like 4 days off. But again, they haven't played in 2 days. The upside, I think, speaks for itself. The downside is this game is going well. He's the first guy they want to put on the bench. So there is a real chance that Joel Embiid, plays 24 minutes again. I don't think that's the most likely scenario. As much as they want to get, I think that requires them to be winning the whole game. And they're back home. So I can see the 76ers get ahead, and they're a little more conservative with this time, thinking like, okay, we can get this game without pushing the big guy. If this game stays close, yeah, I would think they give him 30, 32 minutes again. His body just tolerated it. And again, that's to get him rest. Resting him in a close game is not the wisest way to get him rest. They want this series to end tonight so they can rest him 8 days as opposed to 4 if they have to go back to Brooklyn. Like, they want to end this series here tonight. So, yeah, that's my take there. Now, someone said, do you still have Boban as a C in cash and an A in tournaments with Embiid in? Yes. The last game we saw the fewest minutes out of him, played only 11 minutes and change, did not play well. For that reason, he ends up netting as a C in cash. You could make an argument for a D in cash, even at $4,400 on DK for me. But he's almost certainly going to play. In the games before that, we were seeing 18 minutes. Again, in the game with Greg Monroe starting, he would have played almost certainly 25 minutes if he hadn't fouled out. So I'm not shocked to see 18 minutes out of Boban here, and you can easily get conservatively 30 out of Boban in 18 minutes in kind of the best possible matchup. So at $4,400, I think an A in tournaments is absolutely correct, regardless of the Embiid status. The C in cash might be optimistic. Maybe that should be a D because there is some chance that the minutes still trend down, and Mike Scott gets more of the playing time, etc. Mike Scott very playable on both sites. 3,400 is an obvious Torrey Craig pivot at the exact same price if you're trying to find somewhere to go there. On FanDuel at $4,000. Not someone I'm in love with, but certainly in play, and we need to find some punts tonight. If you're looking for less chalky punts that carry some sort of upside, 30 out of Mike Scott is not impossible, so in play on FanDuel for that reason. I like Jimmy Butler a lot on both sites at his price, regardless of the status of Joel Embiid. If Joel Embiid is out, my first guy is probably Jimmy Butler. Harris has been huge the last couple of games, once in the absence of Embiid for an entire game, once in the absence of Jimmy Butler for basically a half. I have him behind both Butler and Simmons if Embiid is out. If Embiid is out, I trust they will give Greg Monroe the start again, and absolutely I won't go into the 10 minutes I spent on it 2 shows ago or whatever. You should play Boban and not Greg Monroe. I'm convinced Boban will play more minutes. I gave no one disputed me, pretty compelling reason why that would absolutely be the case. So they obviously could change the rotations. Greg Monroe could play even better. Greg Monroe was bad on defense. I mean, bad. And again, in the first half, when everyone was without foul trouble, they gave Boban a whole lot more time. So, in the event Joel Embiid is out, setting aside the value centers for a second, I would rank the other players Butler, Simmons, Harris. And it makes J.J. Redick pretty exciting. On certain sites, he would get in among those other guys just because now the upside is sort of opened up without all that Embiid usage. Among the centers, obviously Greg Monroe is going to be in play. I don't actually even remember his price tonight because I fully expected Embiid to play. But I would much rather play Boban, assuming there isn't a massive price savings by going to Greg Monroe. Shout out to the 17% of people who were nice enough to play Greg Monroe in the last game when he played a minute and a half. Let's go on to the next game and we'll come back to anything I may have missed in questions. 30 minutes until lock. These Spurs and the Nuggets. I'm doing pretty well on my series predictions. I'm out of play. I picked the Thunder in 6. That is not going to happen. So I had a bet with a friend that we would give each other $5,000 if we perfected it. Of the 8 series, I have 7 of them in play, but I'm fully out of play because I picked the Thunder in 6, which is an impossibility at this point. And we will get to that series in a second. But the only series I picked to go 7 was the Spurs and the Nuggets. And the only series out of 8 series that is 2-2 after 4 games is the Spurs and the Nuggets. So I'm feeling pretty good about that one at the moment. There are 5 3-1s, and 2 of them are done again with the Pacers and Detroit taking the long walk. Torrey Craig changes things a lot here. The most immediate leverage pivot is to play Malik Beasley. You spend $300 more on DraftKings. You spend $300 less on FanDuel. I have them projected almost exactly the same because Malik Beasley is a somewhat better fantasy player than Torrey Craig. Basically, Torrey Craig's around a 0.7 PPM guy. Malik Beasley's around a 0.8 PPM guy. And in the last game, they really focused up their rotation. Millsap lost a few minutes, but you saw Murray, Harris, Craig, Millsap, Jokic, and Beasley being the one guy off the bench who got significant time. I think he got 26 minutes. Everyone else was in the teens or something. So you're really sort of scraping bottom of barrel if you're Monty Morrising or Mason Plumlee. I can still get behind Malik Beasley at 43 and 37. I like Jokic a lot. In the event Embiid is out, he's the obvious spend up at center. He had a very good game last game. I think it was 58. And he just missed his triple-double, so that number could have gone up even higher. That was the game I said play him over Embiid. That didn't work out because Embiid played an extra. Well, we don't have to go through that whole thing again. But, you can obviously get 60 out of Jokic. He is priced extremely well. If I'm building a lineup on FanDuel right now, I probably play Jokic over Embiid because I'm saving, I think it's $800, and I know he's going to play. I have no issue with any amount of exposure to Embiid, but again, I said 4-1 he plays. 20% chance of getting a 0. And I'm saving money playing Jokic. On FanDuel in the first lock, if I'm building one lineup, I don't think I put Embiid in it. Now, you're fine to put Embiid in your lineup. But again, remember that last game was super ceiling crazy thing. So there's a certain question what the ownership is. On DK, I'm a huge fan of waiting and checking on news, and then if Embiid is in and starting, then yes, I would prefer that play. I would prefer spending the $700 only more it is on DraftKings. I would definitely play Embiid at that point, and you should have that news before the 76ers game starts at 8. Getting back to the third game of the evening, I don't think Millsap is out of play. He's obviously been balls the last couple games. Don't play him if you're playing Jokic. But had, I believe, 35 in game 2 of this series. Not someone I can enthusiastically, vouch for, but $5,200 is priced to move on DK. 6,000 is not bad on FanDuel at a pretty poor position. So, let's see. So yeah, I like Torrey Craig. I love him on DraftKings. Again, I want to rewind this, but I think at the start of the show I said, We have him at like 35%. I thought he'd be around 54. And then we had actually 54. We'll see if he's actually 54. But that's about the right number. Yeah, again, Denver went into San Antonio, won a absolutely critical Game 4, obviously on the road in a very tough place to play. Hard for me to think they don't go back there again with that as plan A. Jamal Murray, better play on DK. Three-pointers are going to be a big part of his upside if he gets there. Saving $1,000 versus FanDuel. Legit like him there. FanDuel in play, but a lower priority. I would rather save $2,300 and play Dinwiddie. But especially if you're stacking this game in any aspect, Jamal Murray has a very significant upside. In this game, if you're going to get 50 points out of someone on this team, it's going to be Jokic, most likely by far, then Murray, second most likely by far, then Millsap. But again, big fall off there. So if you're ceiling hunting, Jamal Murray obviously in play on both sides. Gary Harris 5,300 on FanDuel is a fine price. And that, I haven't projected for 4 more fantasy points than Torrey Craig, and he's only $700 more. So those guys rank pretty similarly. So I will check real quick the Torrey Craig ownership on FanDuel. If that's in the 30s or 40s, I would probably try to pivot somewhere else, but I bet it is not. On FanDuel, we have Torrey Craig at 11%. I think it'll be higher than that, but yeah, not so much that you need to move away there. So the ownership game works there. Ed Davis is a game time decision. Cool. Nice. Yeah, again, so the Ed Davis thing really affects Jared Allen the most, who's going to be risky no matter what. He's just tournaments for me. We shouldn't ignore the fact that, Embiid has played him off the course literally 5 times. Off the court, literally 5 times. But we also shouldn't, ignore the fact that last game when they didn't have Ed Davis to go to, they stuck with him for 30 whatever minutes. He's a really good fantasy basketball player. 30 minutes of Jared Allen, even at his increased price of, 5.5 as opposed to the pretty brilliant 4.3 and 4.7 we saw. Something you should have interest in. We expect Jakob Poeltl to be pretty cheap, and pretty chalky rather, on the Deke, on DK. $4,100 is a little too cheap for a guy we can feel kind of safe getting 20, 30, 31 minutes now. So that makes sense as a value play. Not a ton of upside again. Craig 54% on DK now. No, I've said that a few times. I was patting myself on the back, Barry Horowitz style, that's exactly the number I guessed, and then the algorithm spit it out. Although I don't know if Tom or someone is just trolling me and they're like, what do you say, 54? Let's put that in. Derek White, again, one ridiculous monster game, so that is in the bag. 6,500 on FanDuel, absolutely fine in tournaments. It's $800 more for Jamal Murray on FanDuel, $600 on DK. I am basically dead tied with Derek White at those numbers. Those are almost dead even for me. Bryn Forbes has been getting significant time. I don't mind him as a value play. 44 on FanDuel, 39 on DK. Those numbers are both perfectly tolerable for me for a guy who I think gets 28, 30 minutes, one of the more trusted hands on this team. Again, one of the effects of Torrey Craig being in there quite so much is that it's enough for me to pull a couple points off of projection off DeMar DeRozan and add about 1.5 points for LaMarcus Aldridge, and that's enough to actually make LaMarcus Aldridge a better point per dollar play for me. And we really saw that last game. Now, the effect of that was muted in that Popovich threw a tantrum. Their defense wasn't good, so he nailed most of the starters' asses to the benches for the fourth quarter. But Aldridge had, 45 fantasy points in 29 minutes. Feels a little safer on the upside, even feels a little better to me here. So saving $300 on FanDuel, $100 on DK. All else being even, if you're picking a forward spot, I would slightly rather run LMA out there than DeMar DeRozan in this game. Rudy Gay is still fine in tournaments. Obviously better on FanDuel, $5,200. Better than $5,000 on DK. But again, Poeltl has been seeing the majority of those minutes. Double D rankings as barely in play for Patty Mills and Marco Bellinelli, especially in sort of a must-win Game 5. Doubting you see a ton of time out of those guys. And then the game I'm kind of looking forward to talk about most. Okay, so let me get into this specifically. God, look at all these people shooting on Russell Westbrook. So, the one-line version of this is that, unlike the Pacers and the Pistons, who I somewhat allegorically referred to going quietly into that good night, Russ don't do that. In his last 3 elimination games, 2 last year and 1 the year previous. Hold on, I think I have this open somewhere. Russ decided he was going to go out shooting if he was going to go out. So, hold on. I think I have it open. Yeah, here we go. So, they were down 3-1 to the Houston Rockets the year before last. And going into the fourth game, this prior to there's no Paul George here, obviously. But Russ took 34 shots. The other starters took 35 in that game. Played 42 minutes. Had 5 fouls, 7 turnovers. Missed his triple-double. Only 9 assists, which, when you take 34 shots, hard to also get your 10 assists. And ended with a line of 47 points, 11 rebounds, 9 assists, 7 turnovers, good for 67 on FanDuel and 75 on DK rather. Last year against the Jazz, they were again down 3-1 in the first elimination game in Oklahoma City. This time next to Paul George. Paul George had a decent game, took 26 shots, put up 53 fantasy points himself on DK. That's pretty good. Russell Westbrook shot 17 of 39 in this game for 45 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 assists. Again, difficult to get that triple-double when you take 39 shots, only 7 dimes for 76 fantasy points. And by the way, no steals and no blocks in either of those games. And then finally, in Game 6 of that series, they won that game, the one I was just referring to. Russell Westbrook shot 18 for 43 for 46 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals in this game to give him his worst of these 3 elimination games, 73 DraftKings points. I'm presenting this largely without comment because I generally don't like narratives. Most of them are dumb, and they I'm a believer of data, I'm a believer of things, but I'm also a believer that if that's 3 elimination games in a row that your starting point guard just decided, I'm going to take dare infinite goddamn shots, that seems something, worth keeping in mind. If we, look at, and again, those last 2 games were next to Paul George. So if we look at this playoff series so far, he has taken in order, 17, 20, 22, and 21 shots. Again, in those 3 games, he averaged 39 shots. He averaged 46 real points. He averaged 74 fantasy points. He averaged 41 minutes on the court. Especially on FanDuel, he's kind of like a dead tie with me with Paul George anyway, but if this narrative is at all true, like, he isn't priced that much on DK anyway. He's what, 10.5, 10.2, I think is the number on DK. I don't even remember. I would have a hard time not just saying, like, yeah, okay, that could happen. I don't really know what to add beyond that. But again, in his last 3 elimination games, and again, those previous series, if you look at him, he was taking 20 shots, 21 shots, 19 shots, 22 shots. And then the elimination games took 30, whatever it was, 35, 39, and 43 or what have you. That clear, and again, did not play that well. And those 3 games had no steals, no blocks, no steals, no blocks, and 2 steals. So, like, there's, ceiling beyond that. So, may not be best for the team. If I was Paul George, I'd be kind of pissed, but again, last year next to a healthy Paul George, playing at an elite level, went out there and took 40 shots a game in those 2 elimination games. Paul George is now injured and not playing his best basketball. So 11-5 on FanDuel. I might have liked Russell Westbrook more than Paul George in this game for the first time all series anyway, and George has been better points per dollar 3 out of the 4 at least. It's 3 out of the 4. That one game he shot 3 for 17 and only had 41. And I like Paul George just fine. But FanDuel, $800 to get up to Russ. I will stop talking about this, so I'll happily answer any questions. But I don't think those 3 games came at random. They all had something in common. So, yeah, and one of those was on the roads. We don't have any. He's in Portland. Is he still going to do that? It seemed important for me to lay that down, because if he goes off and takes 40 shots tonight, no one can attack me. You didn't tell me he was going to. I'm telling you, that happened. Now, regardless, by the way, this is an elimination game. This is one hardcore competitive MF. I really don't think he's going to take it too easy tonight. I don't think the minutes are going to come down. So, for that reason, I'm a big fan of Russ tonight. I'm a bigger fan of Russ than Paul George. It would have been close for me regardless. The narrative is enough to kick it over for me, even on DraftKings. I feel pretty good about it. I think there is a real chance he plays 44 minutes. And that makes him good enough for me, too. So, yeah. Massive fan of Russell Westbrook tonight. Slightly less massive fan of Paul George. Feel free to play both of them. Again, in one of those games last year, you got 55 out of Paul George. But most lineups, I would dramatically overweight Russell Westbrook. This doesn't seem to be... I saw it mentioned on Twitter a couple times. I saw it mentioned in our Slack. A couple people do, know about it. It's not completely hidden information. But right now we have DraftKings ownership projection of Russell Westbrook for 26%. We have FanDuel ownership of Russell Westbrook where you need 2 point guards for 24%. And if Embiid is in, that's going to go even lower. So yeah, I think that's enough on that crazy shit, but that seems to be pointed out. And again, that's one of the sort of the hot takes I have. I think that is a thing. And again, it's not, Torrey Craig. It's a guy who absolutely, if Russell Westbrook wants to take 40 shots, he can. The coach didn't stop him the last 3 times he did it. And last year, it's especially important to me, he did it 2 games in a row last year. You know what I'm saying? It's not like he did it once and everyone came down on him and said, that's terrible. And the coach could be, he did it 1 game and then did it again. And the first game he did it, they won. So, like, even if you don't get that game, even if he doesn't take 40 shots, he's been taking 20. So what are the numbers? 30 now. He still feels pretty good, doesn't he? So just there's enough stupid upside there that even if I just get 65, I'm certainly not shitting in my Cheerios. So yep, Russ would probably be my high. If I was playing tonight, I would probably play 100% Russell Westbrook, and I do not say that often. I would probably just be like, yep, I don't think enough people know about this. There's not much of an edge. If I'm doing this, let's go, get in there. So, because I expect Russ and Paul to put their thing down, I really can't highly recommend anyone else in this game. I still think Steven Adams, just from back-to-backs, putbacks, whatever the fuck, has an upside of 40. Wouldn't shock me at all. He's in playing tournaments. On FanDuel, I would slightly prefer to play Marc Gasol for a few $100s less. On DK, I would probably try to find $400 to play Enes Kanter across the ball. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's fine to play Steven Adams. It's fine to play Jeremy Grant, though that's much more cash. I really don't want to play him. It's fine to play Dennis Schroeder in tournaments, but again, I would probably have none because, again, I'm subscribing to Russell Westbrook theory. How many the hell shots is Dennis Schroeder going to get? Moving past that, talking about Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard on DK is one of our chalkiest players. He should be. He's just objectively underpriced. 10,000 on FanDuel is about right, or maybe even a little low. You can make an argument he should be a little more than that, but that's about right. He should be 91, 92, 93 on DK when a lot of guys are really priced up. He's 8,800, which is a very fair price. It was like Steph last game, who everything went wrong, and Steph Curry, probably the greatest three-point shooter ever, shot 1 of 9 from 3. And had 41-something fantasy points in a blowout. Yeah. So, Lillard isn't that underpriced. I still like Lillard quite a bit. I do slightly prefer him on both sides to McCollum, but it is really, really, really close. Just really for the super upside that he contains is higher than McCollum's. You can get 70 out of Lillard. You almost certainly will not get 70 out of McCollum. But his shot volume has been really solid. He has taken, I believe, 20 shots, give or take 2, every game of this series. Especially on DK, but also on FanDuel. Harkless and Aminu are underpriced. They have tightened up this rotation a little bit, which is especially good for those guys. You're seeing less Durf. Rodney Hood went under 20 minutes for the first time in the series last game. He only played 18. Evan Turner is down to 5-6 minutes a game. So for me, love Lillard and McCollum. Obviously makes some sense if you're stacking up on Westbrook. Slightly prefer Lillard both sites. I like Enes Kanter in tournaments a lot on both sides. 6,700 on FanDuel, 6,100 on DK. On FanDuel, he's less than Karis LeVert, but if you're looking at players who you think have a 10% chance of getting you 50 fantasy points, he's only after LeVert as far as being the cheapest on DK and barely ahead of LeVert as his salary on FanDuel. I would want more of Kanter in tournaments. But again, only hit that ceiling one time this game, but if he is doing well, they will play him 35 minutes. This, again, is obviously a key game. I like Simmons Cantor in tournaments. I am now going to take a minute, refresh some alerts and things, and then we will do questions right up until lock, as my dog loses his shit upstairs for some reason. Jesus, Boban, take it easy. 10 minutes to lock, everybody. Thoughts on Pirtle punt on FanDuel? It's $1,000 to get me Marc Gasol. I'm fine with it. I don't love it, but it's like more of a cash play for me. But you obviously, there is a tournament upside there. If you got 35 out of him, which is not a crazy thing in 30 minutes out of Jakob Pirtle, at $4,900, that would still feel great. So I'm fine with Pirtle in any format. There are other guys who feel a little bit better to me. Kind of prefer Steven Adams. Kind of prefer Marc Gasol. We have Jokic in play. Embiid very possibly going to put his thing down, open up a can. But Boban just wants Embiid news too. Yeah. No, that's we will not get that on this show. We have 9 minutes. That news has come out literally 9 minutes before his game every time. Which, again, by the way, spoiler, people have fucked that up repeatedly and paid the rake for you. If you're playing on DraftKings or Yahoo and you have late swap, pay fucking attention, because people will bullocks that up and pay half the rate for you. They have every single time we've had game time decision Embiid. So make sure you get yourself what basically amounts to some free money. Looking into questions. Why don't you like Jared Allen more? He's Brooklyn's only hope on the boards. Because he's been played off the court against Joel Embiid 4 of the last 5 times, and I think Embiid plays. If Embiid is out, I think it's a brilliant play. He becomes better than Marc Gasol on FanDuel, better than Steven Adams, better than Jakob Pirtle, etc. So if you get news Embiid is out, which, again, FanDuel you're not going to have, but for that game, if you're playing, say, the 8 o'clock slate, yes, by all means. But if Embiid is in, that's a real problem. He is the second best defensive center in the universe. That's not good for Jared Allen. Murray and Kawhi or Butler and Siakam? Pretty clearly Butler and Siakam if Embiid is out. If he's in, I think I would still go Butler and Siakam. Very close. How do you rank these three $5,100 guys? Fournier, Ross, Harris, Jeremy Grant in GPPs. Yeah, all those guys are on DK. I have them all projected within 1.8 fantasy points, so they're obviously pretty similar. Assuming I have no other members of the Magic, I probably barely give it to Ross. Then Harris. I'd probably go Ross, Harris, Fournier, Grant. Yahoo Cash, Jared Allen, Minu, and Damore, Jokic, Harkless, and Gary Harris when you already have CJ. At the moment, I have to take Jokic, Harkless, and Gary Harris. I can't Jared Allen expecting Aminu to play. Harkless or Aminu on DK. I barely have Harkless. That is very close for me, but why you got to be so Harkless? I'm going that way. Boban Wilden. Yeah, he's going nuts up there. Gary Harris or Torrey Craig on FanDuel. If there's no difference, I'll play Gary Harris. Thoughts on Paul Millsap? Fairly interesting in tournaments. Someone just asked, is Joel Embiid in? We do not know. We will likely know in 50s. Literally the last 2 times he was a game decision, we found out exactly 9 minutes before lock. I think to the minute, both times. So we would expect to find that out in 57 minutes, give or take. Whether or not Joel Embiid will grace us with his presence tonight. Again, I've giving you all the information I have. Played 32 minutes last game. Looked good. Didn't look that hobbled. Didn't warm up with a brace. Didn't wear a brace. Didn't wear a compression sleeve. Just looked good. And didn't have 1 day off. He's had 2 days off. I think, again, the appropriate line for does he play or not would be about 4-1 that yes, he plays. That's all the information I have of relevancy. I have many alerts, none of which are going off about it at the moment. Let me search a couple other terms and phrases. A fair comment made by random guy on Twitter is, there's even less appeal for the first game because you are locking in roster that you cannot then spend on not only Embiid, but non-Embiid 76ers if he doesn't play. And that's a really relevant point. In the event Embiid doesn't play, Simmons, Butler, and Harris become 3 of the best 8 plays on the slate. And they're going to be really hard to get in there if you have locked in Vooch, Kawhi, Siakam. I think all those guys are in play. I discussed them extensively. But there's a reason, and actually looking at the one DK GPP lineup I built, it has no one on Orlando or Toronto in that lineup. Any sports bet tonight? No, it didn't come to. By the way, 5-0 in sports bets in this postseason. 5-0. I've made 5, hit every single one. If that was actually my business, that would be great. If I actually had time to bet these things instead of talking to you guys up to lock, that would be great too. But 5-0 when we hit the under on the Clippers and Warriors in the last game. So, go me. Fairly random. I would think if I was the best sports bettor in the world, 3-2 would be an optimistic outcome. If you can nail 60% of your sports bets, you are world class. So, we like to call that luck and or small sample size. But nonetheless, I will take my appropriate victory lap. 5-0. Sorry, I'm holding my thing. 5-0. Had to Booker T that for a second. 4 minutes to go. I really don't think we're going to hear anything. But I am in here looking. Everyone trying to make $1 on Twitter. I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do. And to have people want to hire me and not have to run around and try to solicit tips for my shit. Thoughts on Lowry? I think he is a very good cash play. I think he's in play in tournaments, but again, it's not a great game script for him. And just with Kawhi in there doing Kawhi things, could you get 50? I think it's possible, but there are just generally other guys in his price range I think are a little more likely to spike the ceiling. So, not the world's biggest fan of that man right now, in fairness. Alright, looking for things. Not seeing things, but looking for them. Looking for things. Wookin' Panub. As the great Buckwheat sang. Wookin' Panub. In all the wrong places. Wookin' Panub. Also, Wookin' Pa overlay. Not really seeing any of significance. You're correct. I did say on Sunday I thought it would be our last 4-game slate of the season, and I guess only one team had to pull it out there to prevent that being the case. But no, we got another one. This almost certainly the last one. If you are a DFS fan, if you enjoy just the soothing sound of my voice or playing daily fantasy sports, you should be rooting for some teams down 3-1 tonight, because yeah, we are certainly wanting them to carry it home, to extend those series, to get you more days of DFS. Bow, 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 bow. About a minute to go. Minute 10. Would you do a showdown slate show for the finales? I swear to God, one of these days I'm going to set up a program, because I get that question a lot, where I'm just going to put out, hey, anytime anyone makes a $100 donation to charity, I will do a show for any slate. For any sport. You make $100 in charity, I will show up and do tennis for you. And I won't know anything about it. I won't pronounce the names correctly. I'm going to be like, this guy, wait, it's not a guy, it's a girl. This girl, I bet she's got a wicked forehand, but I would do it if you donate $100 to charity. So I'm going to set up a website for Get Fast Eddie to chaperone my wedding or something. Hot take on rotational player to get minutes cut tonight. Hot take? I have no reason to give a hot take on those. Again, those are pretty predictable. Most likely is probably Paul Millsap to get his cut further. Jared Allen, I would certainly predict to play less minutes than he played in the last game. I would think 35 again for Joe Harris is higher than I project him for. I think I have him at 33 right now. So, but no. Yeah, when I have hot takes, I give them. I try not to invent them for the purpose of having hot takes. I know that's bad TV. You're supposed to Skip Bayless the shit out of life and be like, Michael Jordan would lose in a basketball contest to... Or actually, I'm sorry, he likes Michael Jordan. He would say LeBron James. LeBron James is a worse basketball player than... What's a guy Skip would say? LeBron James is a worse basketball player than Isaiah Thomas. Fight me, coming up next on First Take. Or whatever shit show I'm hosting on Fox for 1/10 of the ratings. Anyhow. There we are, my friends. There we are. We have arrived. Let's see. Let's check out some ownership on FanDuel first, as has been our wont to do of late. Here we go. The $300,000 take. Sponsored by Hulu. They have live sports, or so I have been told. Marc Gasol, 7% in the first lineup I clicked on. So, yes, good job, you. Aaron Gordon, 28. Hard to ignore the fact that, he's been tolerable to pretty good. And again, the minute should be way the hell up on him and a lot of guys. But $5,900, 7% Marc Gasol feels pretty good. Like, it's not a play I love, but 7% on a 4-game slate I'm a big fan of. Kawhi, 33% at $9,800. Bit more than I'd like to have. John Isaac, 11. Feels good. DJ Augustine, 12. Terrence Ross, 7. That feels pretty good. Once Buckwheat sings a song, it's eternally his. Yeah, that's very good. Una panuna banca. That's my favorite there. Let's see, what else is on that skit? I'm the Baba of the Bill Bigado. That's pretty good too. Pascal Siakam, 18%. Again, I'm going to prefer 18% Pascal Siakam to 33% Kawhi Leonard, especially on their FanDuel prices where you're saving a dozen going to Pascal and his theorem. 20% Kyle Lowry. I'd have less. 7% Marc Gasol again for this guy who played $30,000 in Raptors. That is one way to build a lineup. That could work out. Need some overtimes in that game for that fella. Fred VanVleet, 10%, 4,100 on FanDuel. I have no issue with that, of course. All right, let's go to DK, as again, I am tired after clicking on quite so many lineups. It is tiring. It's a tiring and tiresome job. Here we go. Moving on, the 400K on DK. Ho, ho, ho. Let's download some Skrilla while thinking of Joe Prisbilla, who in the NBA went by the nickname the Vanilla Gorilla. There we go. Number 1, 23.5% Kawhi Leonard. It's hard to argue with it, but I would prefer 16% Pascal Siakam. Very close. Kawhi's worth more, but he costs more. That's about where it should be. Aaron Gordon, 13%. I'd want a little bit more. Kyle Lowry, 13%. I'm okay with that. Again, not a lot of ownership here as people appropriately sort of held off. 12% John Isaac. I don't have a problem with that at that price. 9.5% Vooch. Well, that happened fast. Terrence Ross, 7.5%. Evan Fournier, 7%. Danny Green, 6.7%. I don't know. Serge Ibaka, 6%. Fred VanVleet, 4%. DJ Augustine, 4%. Norm Powell, 3.5%. Marc Gasol, 3.3%. Yeah, I'd want more than 3.3% Marc Gasol. Michael Carter-Williams, 0.5%. Kem Birch, 0.35%. Patrick McCaw, 0.05%. Wes Iwundu, 0.04%. Jeremy Lin, 0.02%. Jarrell Martin, 0.02%. Jordan Lloyd, 0.01%. Emile Jefferson, 0.01%. Eric Moreland, 0.01%. Jody Meeks, 0.01%. Mo Bamba, 0.00%. Congratulations, you played yourself. Still recovering from surgery. Ed Davis out. All right, you are now officially, Jared Allen is a legit good play. At this point, regardless. There's enough ways that he can get there. I would prefer him to... Not that you can take Marc Gasol anymore. I don't know. Marc Gasol's 3%. Jared Allen coming off a big game is probably going to be like 15. So I actually probably would have preferred 3% Marc Gasol to 15% Jared Allen. But we saw in the last game, they don't want to roll Rondé out there. They're going to give Jared Allen, in theory, the time. So, especially now that you've added the potentiality of Embiid not playing, Yeah, Jared Allen is a brilliant play. Yeah. Also, shout out to the person who played Markelle Fultz. Congratulations. You have played yourself. Well, there we are, everybody. I think we have 2 games tomorrow, regardless. Let's look at our updated NBA.com schedule. I think it is 2 tomorrow, regardless. Obviously, there's no one on a back-to-back. So we have 2 tomorrow, and then Thursday is 0-4, according to this. Wait, it can't be 0-4. Bullshit on to be declared on the Spurs game. That game has to take place. So you're wrong. But right now, they're all to be declared on NBA.com. But we'll have at least 1 game on Thursday. Could be 2, could be 3, could be 4. Kind of doubting it. Well, could be 4. We could see the Nets and the Magic and the Thunder, I think, have the best chance of pulling off a win tonight. So anyhow, let us see if Russell Westbrook night goes. It's just fun, too, right? Like, it's exciting to have him rostered right now. You're just like, do it. I know I've been giving you shit on Twitter and talking about how you're a ball hog and, you know, you're disrespecting Paul George and you could never win the big one because we're just going to ignore all that. Get it done. Probably is a fun place to be in, I would think. But yeah, no Ed D for you and me. So there it is, my friends. I am gone. For those of you in the Awesemo.com Premium Slack, I will be around for the late slates and happy to answer your questions there. For everyone else, feel free to tweet at me, and if I am indisposed and so disposed, I will certainly be answering you. So, how much Allen would you late swap to? It depends what you have, and I don't know whether Embiid's going to play yet, and that would obviously that's a center spot and makes an Allen a far worse play, so I can't answer that question absent those 2 pieces of information. But if you want to follow up, that came in the premium Slack, so send me a private message and I will happily further elucidate upon my answer. For everyone else, bonne chance and good luck.